Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Matic Blagonic, who is the vocalist of the band Hei'An out of Slovenia. We talk all about their new album that's coming out on September 26th, titled Kiss Our Ghosts Goodbye. We talk a lot about the start of the band. Matic's start with it as a sort of COVID project, how it developed into a full band through mutual friends and people that he knew through the music scene, and how the music has developed a lot from their previous record to this one. If you're a fan of bands like From Ashes to New, from Bad Omens, from Architects to Bring Me the Horizon, to all the sort of like modern metal bands that have a lot of electronic elements and kind of some genre fusing from all different angles, this band's definitely worth checking out. We do get into how they're a little bit different. They definitely go a little heavier, and we talk about the influences of the Slovenian scene that might be on that, and the reason for that, why they kind of differ from some of these other contemporary counterparts that might be out of the United States or the UK, as a few of the examples that I just listed. And we talk all about the kind of three different concepts that Matic went into when it came to the lyrics of this music. On the production side, again, they worked with the same producer who has worked with bands like Architects and Amity Affliction, Randy Slaw. And they talk all about how this record was a big step up for them overall with what they're trying to do and their vision for Hei'An as a band. We also talk a little bit about how they were the first Slovenian band to be considered for an Emmy nomination, which is pretty impressive. And so, yeah, this band's absolutely criminally underrated. I hope they get big enough that they can come to the States so I can check them out. But in general, I really hope people listen through to kind of get the background on this band, and definitely go check out this record again, Kiss Our Ghosts Goodbye, which is out this week on Friday from when this is being released, September 26th. So definitely check that out there. And I really appreciate Matic taking his time out of his busy schedule to do this with me, especially with our pretty big time difference. It was a great conversation. So before we get into the episode, remember you can always contact me at thepowerlesspod@gmail.com, or at thepowerlesspod on all social media. There's also a website where you can find the latest episodes, the latest written pieces, find access to the Substack, as well as the merch store. That is thepowerlesspod.com. So if you want to contribute something, whether it's buying a shirt, whether it's donating some money on Patreon, $2.50 a month, whatever the case may be, please check that out if you like this episode, or if you're a return listener, a new listener, everything in between. I would really appreciate it. It just helps me with making sure I can take the time to edit these things and contact different bands and artists and journalists and authors and all these different things to keep the show going. So I really appreciate that. And lastly, before we get into the episode here with Matic and talk about everything with Hei'An, I do want to get into one thing that I've been talking about at the beginning of every episode whenever I do these intros, which is, again, the ongoing starvation and genocide and ethnic cleansing happening to Palestinians in Gaza as well as in the West Bank. We know that there are some reports coming out from international doctors that have been there that are saying that the death toll could be as high as 680,000. The IDF themselves have even admitted that it could be 200,000, which at this point seems like they're trying to lowball the number, but regardless, 200,000, 680,000, whatever these numbers are, we know it's drastically higher from the numbers that have been reported officially out of the Gaza Health Ministry. So I do want to just take the time to make sure to go over these links that you can find from the website, The Cut. I will have this in the link below and all the show notes. But here are some of the organizations that you can donate to help try to get necessary aid and food and resources to Palestinians in Gaza. So we've got Reviving Gaza, which distributes filtered water, hot meals, and dry food parcels to victims of the war. It also offers cash aid to Gazans or Palestinians in Gaza. For Palestine, which provides financial help, supplies, water, and meals for people in North Gaza. The Samir Project, which provides water, tents, and medications to people on the ground. Gaza Soup Kitchen, which provides meals to displaced families by sourcing ingredients from remaining farms in North Gaza. Dignity for Palestine, which supports displaced Gazans with food parcels, clean water, and medications. Oxfam, which works with local partners to provide a wide range of humanitarian aid and is fundraising to scale up its response wherever it's allowed. World Central Kitchen, which has resumed its hot meal service in Deir al-Balah Field Kitchen. UNICEF USA, which is on the ground providing services including clean water, malnutrition, treatment, and cash aid to children and their families. And Save the Children, which is partnering with local groups to provide nutritional support, essential medical services, and basic supplies. So you can make sure to go to this link. Again, that'll have all these resources where you can donate if you have the means, or if not, share this around to people that could, just to try to do anything and everything we can to support the people that are in the most dire straits right now in the world. So with that, I thank you for listening through that and my little spiel here that I do in every intro. But I do think as we talk about music and talk about things that we find enjoyment in, that we should just take a moment to reflect on and see what we can do to help others that do not have that luxury whatsoever. So with that, we're going to get into the episode with Matic, with the band Hei'An out of Slovenia on the Powerless Podcast. Thanks so much. All right. I am here for the next episode of the Powerless Podcast with, I apologize if I mispronounce both your name and the band name. I read things a lot and I haven't heard it said out loud, but Matic, who is the vocalist and kind of the original starting point, right? Mastermind behind the band. Hei'An, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You pronounced the band name right. My name's Matic, though.
Okay, there we go. I knew I was going to mess one of them up. That's what I get. Yeah, that's the dumbass American over here, right? So appreciate it.
Look good.
Matic, who is the vocalist of the band Hei'An out of Slovenia, was really happy to find out about your band. I like that you use them. I'm always bad with subgenres, but I think the term post-metalcore fits pretty well with you guys' sound. For anyone listening, if you're into bands like Bad Omens, Bring Me the Horizon, a lot of the bigger modern metal bands now, you'll definitely enjoy this band, but you'll also get something a little different, I think, from you guys as well. I think you kind of expand the sound a little bit, definitely go heavier on certain things than some of those bands do, which is really cool. A very, very dynamic record that we're going to be talking about today that's out September 26th called Kiss Our Ghosts Goodbye, which is your second album. And I got to say, after hearing about you guys getting this from your publicist and diving into it, I listened to it on repeat for quite a while on my commutes to work and things like that. So absolutely happy to have you on. First and foremost, just how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for this thing. It's pretty much the highlight of my day because it's a boring Sunday here in Slovenia. So, yeah,
awesome. All right. Well, fantastic. What I like to do is kind of break down when I have especially one person on where I can kind of talk to you one-on-one with these things, is kind of talk to you about where music first got big for you, kind of your trajectory into getting away from just being a casual listener to wanting to create your own, and then get into the band. We can break down the album that'll be out in a couple of weeks if that works for you. But what I like to do for a little icebreaker is to kind of ask, what have you been listening to a lot lately? What's kind of your Spotify on repeat or equivalent of? Just what have you been listening to a lot lately?
I mean, I listen to a lot of different stuff, and lately it's been a lot of K-pop. So that's interesting.
Amazing.
So yeah, a bunch of Blackpink and Jennie and stuff like that. But also, I mean, Bad Omens have just been dropping their new singles recently, and I've had Spectre and Impose on repeat since they came out. So a lot of everything.
Yeah, that latest Bad Omens one, Impose that you just said, that one I was, Spectre was good. I thought Impose was really, really great. It really showed what a modern metalcore band can really do when they're going full tilt into the genre, And yeah, it's pretty hard for their vocalist to do any wrong. I think he's one of the top people out there to do it. There's a reason why they're one of the biggest bands in the world, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Noah's on that.
Yeah. When it comes to, do you find, are you an avid K-pop listener, consistently, or is that something new for you? You just dipping your toes into it, or a long time fan?
It's pretty new for me, actually, and it's interesting because, if you asked me this a couple of years ago, I probably would have been like, oh, no, fuck that genre. I'm never going to listen. I was kind of that kind of guy for a while. But in recent years, I've really tried to, expand my music horizons as much as I could. And lately, I've been getting into K-pop a lot. So maybe we'll put out a K-pop record someday.
Yeah. Hey, it'll be the next genre you pull into your music, right? Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, this is going to sound extremely lame to the listeners. I'll get roasted for this. But I never really listened to it. I'm not a hater on it was just never something I dove into. I've always kind of been a punk and metal, and then a little bit of hip hop and rap and stuff like that. But I'm a teacher for my day job, and I actually some of my students are obsessed with this Netflix movie that's the biggest movie in the world, the K-pop Demon Hunter one.
Yeah.
And I, of course, that's people are going to be like, oh, that's not, that's a fake band, that's a Netflix kids show or whatever. But I was enthralled with how catchy and in my head the songs were the second that they played them. And then I actually started listening to some real bands recently when I kind of was in the mood for something that wasn't as heavy as what I typically listen to. It's you realize why this is the biggest genre in the world right now. They've really nailed it down to a science of just having hooks and beats just stuck in your head all day after one listen. It's pretty impressive.
Everything's just hooky, catchy every single millisecond. That's what the best for. You get no breaks in a single song, and the production is always just better than anything you've ever heard. That's why I find it fascinating. That's why I started diving into it. I feel from the sort of technical perspective, where the production just really, really spoke to me because it's just that good, and yeah, they got it down to a science, like you said. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. It's definitely, even from like you said, from a songwriting or sonic perspective, it's definitely something to pull from, especially when you're a band like yourselves that bring in some electronic elements and pop elements. It's it's just another thing to keep in mind when it's it's like you said, there is no fat on it. It's all meat, and it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for going over that. It's cool to hear. It's always fun to hear, guys in a metal band, which I know you guys brought, branched out to a lot of different genres, but getting really into some popular music and pulling elements from that.
Hmm.
To kind of kick things off here for you, I know from reading a little bit of the background of the band that this project really started first and foremost with yourself, right? So this kind of started on your own, and then gradually the band grew into a full band and everything in between. So before that even happened, let's go back as far as you can. When did music kind of become a big thing for you? Was it like your parents getting you into some bands that they listened to? Was it, kind of what did you grow up with and what got you really into music as a fan?
Yeah. So we can go really way back with this one if
Yeah.
you want.
Oh yeah, of course.
I remember being in second grade of elementary school, and I don't think I ever really actively listened to music before that. But I remember there was like this big AC/DC craze going on in my class, and all the kids were listening to it, and you were really cool if you had a CD at home and stuff. And I researched this band, I liked it, and then I remember YouTube suggesting me "The Trooper" by Iron Maiden, which I had never heard before, never heard of the band. I clicked on it as a 7, 8-year-old, however old I was, and it just blew my mind. And I remember at that moment, I was like, okay, I want to play guitar, I want to do something. And then my parents enrolled me in music school and stuff. So it started with Iron Maiden. So I'm pretty proud to be able to say that.
Yeah, well, that's a classic. Yeah, having one of the biggest, most massive, and influential bands in metal in the world be with you at such a young age, that's not a bad way to start. I don't think most of us get to say that cool of a band to start off with. It's usually like for me, it was like some dad rock band my dad was listening to or something. So hit the ground running with metal music for sure. So you went from that, and your parents enrolled you in music school. So you were specifically going to school for music composition, or what was that kind of like for you?
Yeah, so I was taking guitar lessons all through elementary school, and then after elementary school, I enrolled in the Conservatory of Music, and I was studying classical guitar there, and then only then even started diving into classical singing, which I didn't do much of, but I did do some years of it as well. And after that, I studied music production. So yeah, all music all the time, kind of different branches and different types of music. It's really interesting because I went from classical to pure production stuff to everything, and then ended up being in a metal band and writing metal music ish. But it was music all the time for sure.
Do you find, because I've talked to numerous people from all over the place that are in metal bands that started off kind of learning classical guitar or classical composition or the case may be, and I think there can be, especially if you're talking about classic metal bands or certainly prog and things like that. Do you find that there's still some through lines there, whether directly or indirectly, with how you approach music? Because there is, I think, more of a connection to kind of classical composition to metal than a lot of people really think about or realize.
Yeah, I'm really thankful that I got to do all of that, because I feel like just this whole theoretical background and just understanding different compositional techniques and chord structures and then the way melodies are formed in a not just in a basic self-taught kind of way, although that's perfectly fine as well. I'm not trying to speak ill of anybody. That's a perfectly good approach, but I do feel like it is really helpful for me to sort of have a bit of a deeper understanding of how music is written and be able to use that. Although I do like to write music in a bit more of an intuitive way. I don't really think about theory much when I write, but it helps so much to be able to come back and do, okay, this is what we did here, so maybe it would make sense for this next part to do this. It becomes kind of an intuitive thing after so many years of doing it. It's not like I think about it, but it definitely helps. Classical music and metal music, I feel like, have a lot of stuff in common, even if you're not a neoclassical band. Just the structural part and the chord structure part and everything, it has a lot in common. So I probably wouldn't have been as easy for me if I didn't do that. That's what I'm going to say.
Right. It's one of those things where you don't want to necessarily sit down and compose it like a classical composer would. You want to free flow with a more modern way, but having that background, make sure you know that at least certain things will make sense together, right? Yeah. But at the same time, what's good about some metal, of course, this would actually end up, sometimes I think people accidentally go into like modes and stuff without even really realizing it, and kind of having these certain flats or sharps that they throw into an otherwise like minor key signature. You can do that and understand that you're doing it, where maybe some other people that didn't have that training just like fall into what sounds good and it ends up being that way. I think it's like you said, it makes it a little more streamlined to probably incorporate some of those elements, right? Just having that background knowledge while still not like sticking to exactly what you learned in school, right?
Exactly.
To go from that, I know at least from what I can find online that this project Hei'An was originally started in 2020 by you, um, largely during kind of like during lockdown for COVID for the most part is when it really got going, right? So kind of give the background on that, why you started doing this, if there was if part of the lockdown was like a big reason why you were able to hone in on it so much. Just kind of speak to the background of developing this project.
Yeah, so I started writing some, singer-songwriter kind of stuff in early high school, and it was all just me and, the acoustic guitar and, just writing songs like that. And when lockdown, and I had like 40, 50 plus songs written or song ideas or whatever through the course of the years and never did anything with them. And so when lockdown happened, I felt like, okay, I now have time. I can, this is the perfect opportunity to try to make something out of this, create some sort of product that I can show to people or whatever. And that's sort of where the idea of, starting something a bit more serious started coming from. And so, yeah, because I did have that time, I started properly arranging the songs and figured that, okay, apparently they're going to be metal songs, which I wasn't sure yet until that point, what kind of style exactly I would, dive into with those, but it just kind of made the most sense from the way the songs were written. And yeah, I started the band itself with some people that I knew from the conservatory. Guy, our drummer, we were schoolmates there. We were even, we were in the same dorm as well. So, we go way back. And the same goes for, the other boys we met in kind of that whole environment. So yeah, even though COVID was a horrible time for, a lot of people for a multitude of reasons, I'm super, super thankful to have had the chance, to see the world stop, everything stop, and me being able to just be like, okay, what do we want to do now? What do we want to do with these songs that I've been sitting on for so long? And it might, if it wasn't for COVID, they might have not been released when they were released. So I am grateful for that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a weird thing to realize, like that reality of like what the world was at the time, but also appreciate that you had the time to. It's like I literally can't do anything else. I might as well focus in on these things I've kind of like had in my back pocket for a while, right? Exactly. I know it's a weird. I had a few things happen like that for myself at that time, and I kind of felt bad that I enjoyed having the time, even though like there's also the existential dread along with it. Yeah, it's a conflicting feeling for sure. well, kind of along with that, you get this band going. Initially you had some demos that you had put up on YouTube, from what I could gather, that are now no longer up there, but started getting a few listens with relatively little marketing. Kind of got a little bit of a starting point for the project. And then after you get all the band members together, you decide to go in, right, and record your first full-length record, which I'm, again, as a dumb American here, probably going to pronounce the album wrong, but Imago, would that be right?
Imago, it's from
Imago.
Latin.
See,
Imago.
I'm gonna get roasted for this one. Imago. All right, there we go. But a great record. Absolutely love it. It seemed like, especially for a first record, there's a lot of high production value for it. I know that this was one that you recorded in Slovenia, right? Yeah. And just kind of when that was able to come out, I think you recorded it in 2021, right? And
something like that, yeah.
You probably at that time slowly get to start actually having things open up a little bit more, to where you can possibly do shows. And I'm just kind of curious, as someone that lives far and away from Slovenia or Europe in general, was the scene in Slovenia for metal music, like, is it pretty strong for you guys to kind of get started in the live music part of kind of building your fan base and kind of building your live presence? Like what's kind of the scene like for you guys in general in Slovenia for the metal scene and live music at large?
It's great. I mean, maybe not for the entire country, because obviously most of the events happen in the main cities, mostly in the capital, but not only at all. But yeah, there's so many events happening all year round. I also do work in the event industry as well outside of Hei'An. I do some live sound here and there, even some event organization this year, and there's stuff going on all year round. And in terms of the metal scene itself, especially in Ljubljana, the capital where I've been living now for several years, we have shows every week, probably. Sometimes there's even more than one show you could go to a day. It can get that wild, especially maybe during the summer or, with more busy periods like that. And although the metal scene here is generally more oriented towards, more traditional metal bands maybe, or more heavier music, like we have a lot of death metal, we have a lot of tech death going on, we have a lot of black metal bands that are, really, really killing it. So maybe the more core scene, the metalcore, deathcore, and stuff like that, is a little less present over here, but it still is. We still do have bands that do that kind of style, like us, for instance, and several others as well, just not as many as they do black metal. So it's a healthy scene for sure, and I'm really glad, that even though it's a small country and a country that's unknown to so many people, we also get a lot of big bands passing through. We have a lot of very big metal names playing in Ljubljana all year round as well. And it's something that somebody might not expect, but it's definitely something that helped build us as listeners and therefore build our tastes and build us as musicians. So it's surprisingly vibrant. It's surprisingly vibrant for sure. I'm glad that it is.
Yeah, no kidding, right? It makes kind of cutting your teeth in the live music scene a lot easier when you can do it hometown, as opposed to needing to travel and cross borders and everything in between to really get going. When you kind of say that there's a lot more of like the classic metal or death metal or black metal, just because here in the States, as maybe sometimes at various iterations of scenes, it's always very like it could sometimes be, it's getting better in inclusivity and just letting different bands play together, different genres, whatever. But there's also a lot of like elitism and like separation. Is that an issue when it comes to kind of being a core band, like with these black and death metal bands, or is it more of like an inclusive kind of scene for you in Slovenia?
I mean, there are definitely several elitists as well. I guess they're everywhere. And
yeah, of course.
They're so loud. It's sometimes when you like scroll through Facebook comments or whatever, it can feel like there's so many of them. But I feel like they're not the majority. Because even people that do enjoy, I also enjoy my death metal and black metal and tech death when the right day comes. So fuck yeah. But I feel like the elitists are definitely in the minority. They can be really, really loud and really, really make their presence known, but it's still cool. It's not. I don't feel like it's a toxic environment for subgenres.
Yeah. It's good to know that there's dipshits everywhere, not just here, I guess, when it comes to the scenes, right? Yeah.
They're everywhere. No, they're everywhere.
Yeah, it's something that can be universally totally annoying. But okay, so after one thing I wanted to get to with your initial album was that I had seen, and I had seen some posting from you guys from when this had happened, that you were the first Slovenian band to be considered for a Grammy nomination for this record, and specifically for Noises, right? So kind of what was the experience of that like? Because that's, I know you didn't end up getting the nomination, but even just being considered for it and being the first band from your country ever to be considered for that is kind of a crazy feat for a first record. So kind of walk me through that. What was that like?
Yeah, it was so random and so cool. So, I mean, it would have been a much less of a big deal here if we weren't the first, because again, it wasn't quite a nomination. So worldwide, if you look in the grand scheme of things, a lot of artists get through the screening process and do get considered and everything. But yeah, because we were the first in Slovenia, it definitely, the media covered it as well, and it gave us a lot of good exposure here, which I'm super, super thankful for. But the way it happened, it was just totally random. So we were working with our good friend and producer Randy Slaw on our first record already. Although on that record he only did like some additional production and stuff. He wasn't like a full-blown producer on it. On this new record, he was a co-producer together with us. And he's a voting member of the Recording Academy. So he's one of those people that have a say in it, one of many thousands. So it's not like one single vote can make a difference. But he's the one that got the idea that, dude, let's just submit you guys for the Grammys and see what happened. Maybe we get through the screening process, and we did. And I still can't believe that we did. So yeah, who knows? Maybe nominations next someday. Let's hope for it.
Yeah, for this next record, let's go, right? No, but that's just like a really cool feat, especially as you said, a relatively small nation. I think there's just a couple million people in Slovenia in total. So that's really, really, that's like still, I mean, again, I know it's not a nomination. It'd be cool if you could just, the nomination thing is cool just because you can put it in like a press release of like Grammy nominated metal band. But even just being considered for it in that vein is like definitely a cool feat that you say a lot of people get that consideration, but a lot more don't, right? So it's still like a very, very cool feat for a first record. I also know from that first, kind of first, I would say, album cycle for you guys that you actually got to go record like the Live at East West Studios EP, which was, you came and did that in in the States, right? You worked with having basically orchestra and piano accompaniments with several of your songs from your first record. Kind of break that, like, where that idea came from and what that experience was like. Was that the first time you and your bandmates had ever come to the United States? And just kind of tell me, like, how did everything go in the background of that?
I mean, it wasn't the first time I've been to the States. It might have been the first time for some of them. I think it was the first time for Guy and Mateo, yeah. But the other, we've been before, but not all together. Yeah, the idea, so we knew pretty early on, Imago is obviously a very organic sounding record, and we really wanted it to sound like that because we knew very early on that the next one, we want it to sound much more, produced and polished and electronic, and we want to kind of explore that aspect of our writing and ourselves and what this band could be. And so because we knew that it was a really good chance to showcase the organic side of things, and because Imago is such a symphonic influenced record, we felt like it was the perfect chance to try to do a little thing with a live, we knew that a live orchestra would probably be out of reach for a lot of reasons, but at least a live string quartet or something. And the initial plan was to do it here in Slovenia at the Cosmosonic Studios and get, some of our Philharmonic guys here who are also sick and, killing it in their own right and everything. But then me and Matej Gobec, the producer for the first record, we went to NAMM, the NAMM show in Anaheim in probably 2021, I think. Yeah. Maybe 2022. I think it was 2021. When did we record the East West thing? I don't remember the year.
2023. Oh no, you released it in 2023, so you must have maybe recorded it.
Then it was 2022. Then it was 2022. Yeah. Then that's the year when we went to the NAMM show then. And we went to say hi to Randy in person for the first time because we've only had calls like this and emails and stuff before that. And, meet some other people that he wanted us to, meet that, again, we've only ever corresponded with digitally and usually in writing. So it was, a really cool, fun experience and everything. And when we were there, Matej, I remember, we were just kind of drinking one night at one of the after parties after the NAMM show, the Marriott Hotel there. And he was like, dude, if you want to do something really cool, let's do the session that we were talking about here in LA somewhere. Maybe let's try to pick a legendary studio, even if just for one day, because we knew that, the fees for studios like that would probably be, through the roof. So let's just rent one day. One day will probably be manageable. Let's try to make something really cool. And we mentioned the idea to Randy. He was super, super down to do it. And he pretty much arranged most of it for us. So thank you, Randy. And then it just happened. So, and we're still pinching ourselves because, the quartet that we had there, some of them mentioned that they recorded some stuff with Metallica before for something. So when they mentioned that, we're like, okay, that's way out of our league. But yeah, it was really cool. A really cool thing to do.
Yeah, like what a hell of an experience. Because so many bands, like I remember when Architects I think they did it at the Abbey Road Studios, I want to say. And just, it adds, and same for your guys' songs that you put on this EP, just adds such a unique element to it that kind of does harken back to, like, as everyone would think of, like the Metallica live orchestra albums and things of that nature. It kind of brings that element to, like, more modern metalcore, post-metalcore, whatever you want to call it, that just, like, gives it this cool feel that, like, feels very organic and, like, analog while also still having that modern feel to it. It's just, like, a really, really cool and special thing that, again, I'm sure half the bands in the States wouldn't even consider being able to do that in a studio like that with a quartet like that. And so, yeah, super, super awesome, and a cool way to kind of promote those songs again too in a different way, right? Get new eyes on it, or ears on it, I guess, that wouldn't have heard it before. So to go from that, let's get into your album again that's coming out on September 26th, Kiss Our Ghosts Goodbye. I know you've had 4 singles, I believe, from it, right? We've had Make Me Want to Leave You, To Let You Down, What a Shame, and What Do You Have to Save. All in all, yeah, I think this record, I think from what you just said compared to your first album, everything you said is spot on. It's a lot glossier production. Again, first one sounds great, but this one is a lot glossier production, a lot more electronic elements. You're really pulling in a lot more of those kind of pop and electronic influences that we discussed earlier. So what was kind of you kind of said you had this in your mind even before this album was put together, but what was kind of the thought of changing, having such a different approach and sound to the production as well as the songwriting for this album as opposed to your debut one?
I mean, there were so many little factors and little reasons and the stuff at play here. But I feel like through the creation process of the first one, one of the initial ideas for the first one was to already kind of make it a little more electronic and a little more produced. But we just felt like the songs, when we started adding like the little orchestral arrangement ideas into them and everything, they just popped a little better if we kept them more organic. So that's when we decided we want to dive, full blown into that, organicness of it. And because of that, we knew that, okay, if we're doing this now, and we kind of already had the idea to kind of do something more electronic with this already, let's save it for the future and let's do a totally contrasting thing and make it like that. But one big thing was also that after Imago was released, although again, we're still super proud of that record and we love it and everything, one of the things that we did, being really, really nitpicky and perfectionist, because we all are a bit like that, we started analyzing what we did with the record, with the first one, I mean, and what we felt like we did right, what felt like that maybe we could improve upon and everything. And we realized that the bands that we look up to and really listen to, and kind of that are some of the biggest influences for our own band, are doing some things a certain way, and maybe it'd be cool to try to emulate that to get closer to what they're doing, but with Hei'An spin on it. That's one big thing with this band. We never want to be like just a bad copy of another big artist. We really want to, kind of have our own way. But at the same time, we wanted to, be part of the scene that we want to be part of. So we figured, okay, let's ramp up the whole production thing. And we also really, really wanted to improve as songwriters and as arrangers and even just as individual musicians with this record. So I remember we were all, I was starting to write vocal melodies that I could barely even sing properly. I mean, I could sing them, but I didn't like the way I sang them at the time. And it really, I even had some additional vocal lessons because of this record, just to be able to record it and to pull it off live the way I want to. And the other boys, they just spend countless hours rehearsing stuff that they'd never quite rehearsed before, maybe necessarily in such a way. So we really kind of wanted to push ourselves in every conceivable aspect of this band that we could. Also, in terms of band image and in terms of music videos and branding and everything, we just really, really wanted to take everything we did with record one and just do it better with this album. Better, quote unquote, but still. And yeah, I mean, I feel like there's always room for improvement with anything that anybody ever does. So I'm not saying it's the perfect album or anything like that. We're already kind of trying to think about, okay, what can we improve upon with the next one? But we are definitely super proud of this one and the first one too. But especially what we're proud of is, kind of the personal progress that we pushed ourselves to do with the second one because of the first one. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to be so happy when this is released in like 11 days. So
yeah, no, all that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think the best musicians, I mean, I'm sure you've said this or thought this a million times, the best musicians are your own worst or most intense critics, to where, like you said, this one's coming out in 11 days. You're already thinking about LP3 or whatever the next release would be and how it could be better, and scrutinizing, I'm sure, like scrutinizing every song to where some days you don't even want to hear them in some ways, and all that kind of stuff. Like, even though you love the songs, like that's just what a good musician does, right? It's the curse. But yeah, one thing with this record, to your point where you said you don't want to be a bad copy, you want to do kind of like what some of these bigger bands that you reference in your press release, obviously, like Architects, Bad Omens, Bring Me the Horizon, all those huge, massive bands that have kind of created this newer sound that's pulled in everything from new metal to symphonic elements to pop to metalcore, of course, and all these different things. Is one thing that I noticed. The first thing I listened to when I kind of got that press release, I was like, oh, it'll be like a kind of like a Bad Omens type band. And then my Arnis comes on, and the very end of the song, you basically do have like, I mean, it's different production, but like black metal, just like, tremolo picking, like guttural vocals over like, just punching drums. It's like they're doing a little more than just like the Bad Omens thing. They're definitely still bringing in these like more extreme metal elements. So is that kind of what you're talking? You're kind of bringing in all these different, I guess that could come from, like you were saying, the scenes you're around, black metal and death metal probably being a lot more prolific there than, say, in some of the scenes here in like the Chicago area and stuff like that. Was that like a conscious decision to kind of include more extreme parts than this otherwise like, genre that I think goes to maybe metalcore most of the times, the heaviest elements, or was that just like organic? Kind of, where did that come from? Because it's a very unique part of this, I think, for you guys.
I mean, I'd say it was half conscious and half organic, because again, yeah, we come from different musical backgrounds. We all listen to a bunch of stuff. We talked about a bit about how the scene is like here and everything. But one big thing with this record was that we really, really didn't want to feel, especially me when I started writing it, but all of us, we didn't want to feel like we were putting anything in any certain type of genre or subgenre box. Because when you mentioned those bigger bands earlier, like Bring Me the Horizon are a stellar example, because they just have the balls, so to speak, to fuse so many different elements that when you would say it out loud, it would feel like, okay, this is never going to work. And then you hear the song and it's a banger. And that's why we felt like we had to let go of all mental restrictions and just write whatever we want to write and whatever feels right. So in that sense, it was organic. We just, allowed ourselves to write whatever. On the other hand, especially with My Harness in particular, which you mentioned, we did want to have some moments in some of the songs where the listener would go like, okay, what the hell is going on and why do I like this? You know what I mean? So that breakdown in particular was a conscious decision. It was like, okay, let's just make this one the heaviest thing we can possibly do, something that nobody will expect us to do after hearing Imago, for instance. Yeah, we just, we had fun with it. I'm glad that we did, because I'm a really big fan of especially those little moments on this record where the weird shit is going on. So we're probably gonna be doing more of this weird shit in the future as well.
I love it, especially because, like you said, on paper, if you tried to write that out, someone, like if you were with a producer you hadn't worked with before, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? But it totally fits as well. That's what I like about it, is there are like some abrupt transitions in the album, but it's kind of cool that they are. It really has like an abrupt switch of like the style that you're doing, but in a way that's cohesive. Yeah, trying to like explain that to somebody before you do it would be a little insane to try to do. You worked on this album a lot more with Randy Slaw, who again has done things like Architects, The Amity Affliction, numerous other large bands that, like, if someone's listened to modern metal, they've heard his like musical DNA on these major releases, and was also mixed by someone that's done like Bad Wolves and From Ashes to New. When you kind of write this music as five members of a band that have all had like a pretty distinct musical background, you yourself with music production, what is the role of like a producer for you guys in a bit? Because every band I talk to, it's completely different. There's some people that come in and it's like the producer helped them write like half of the record. Like they came in, is it more sonic elements? Is it trying just a little bit of tweaks around the edges? Kind of what was the songwriting process with your producer? And just kind of speak to that part as in depth and nerdy as you want, if you want to just kind of break that down for me a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, we knew that we wanted to bring Randy in for this one in a bit of a bigger capacity, so that he'd have a bigger impact on the sound, especially because of the sonic direction we wanted to go in. And as you said, he's worked on all of these records that sound pretty much like we wanted our record to sound in terms of sonic space and production on its own. I mean, not necessarily in terms of songwriting, but yeah, so it was only natural to bring him in a bigger capacity. And since he lives in the States and we're in Slovenia, we sadly didn't get to do any in-person sessions for this one. Maybe we'll get to do some in the future. We'll see, hopefully. But yeah, we brought him in really, really early on when we were only in the demo stage. Some of the demos weren't even fully fleshed out yet. A lot of them were, though, because I kind of never like to show ideas too early of a stage to outside people before I'm like pretty content with it already. So a lot of the demos were fleshed out to a very big degree already. So yeah, he wasn't quite writing with us, although he did, I have to say that he did have some like little suggestions in terms of writing as well, like, oh, this part kind of, maybe you're losing the intensity a bit here, maybe you should get rid of this break, or maybe you should move this around here, or maybe this chorus could repeat twice, stuff like that, like just little suggestions, not necessarily writing, you know what I mean? But yeah, after that, so since we were the co-producers and he was a co-producer, since we recorded this album in Slovenia, although in a different studio, we were updating him all the time. We were, always talking and everything. We're showing him stuff that we were doing. But so the band aspect of production, so, how exactly are we going to record this? How exactly, are we going to do this in terms of live instrumentation and everything? That was pretty much all us. And then the electronic stuff, which is a massive, massive, massive part of this record, I'd say is, I don't know, maybe 30% us, 70% Randy, because we came up with all of the ideas for it. We came up with, the synth melodies, the like little pad chords and everything. He just, took our ideas and made them so much more massive and so much more polished and so much more proper sounding, so to speak. And, it just, when those demos started coming back from him after we'd sent our versions to him, it just, it was still the same song. It just sounded right this time.
Right.
If that be the right word. And so yeah, it was an interesting workflow, maybe a bit of an unconventional one, but that's what happens when you have geo restrictions, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was really smooth anyway. It was so smooth. I love working with the guy. I'm sure we'll work again because it's just so amazing working with him. Got our vision down so well, and he understood exactly what we wanted right away. And one thing I really like about working with him was that he said, and this is his word. I'm not sure if that's a term that is more broadly used. I've never heard it before, but he said that he loves that both him and us are musical omnivores, and that we listen to a lot of different stuff and fuse it together. And he loved that aspect of our writing, so that's why we kind of clicked right away, which is something that we probably wouldn't get with every producer in the world, because I'm sure there are producers that have their own lane, which again, nothing wrong with that, but that's really specialized in something in a smaller aspect of music. But Randy is a really open-minded guy and a really broad thinking guy, and that's why he really worked so well as the go-to choice for this record in particular. It was a fun process.
Yeah. It sounds, despite it having to be primarily remote, it sounds like a really streamlined experience. When you, like you said, I don't like, not that it would sound bad, but I don't know that you could have this. You would have the same record if you were working with, say, like a producer that solely worked with metal, like classic, as we were talking about earlier, like classic metal elements, or just like not into kind of the programming aspects that you would hear more from modern metal now, but also a lot of pop music and things of that nature that you bring to the forefront in a lot of these different songs. So that's really, really cool. And yeah, of course, the mix, which was, I always try to credit people here when I can, which was done by two different people, Joseph McQueen and Zach Cervini, who again have worked with, like I said, From Ashes to New, Bad Wolves, Bring Me the Horizon, Bad Omens. Across the board here, you were able to bring in people that are top of the game for understanding this specific style that encompasses a lot of things. I think, which is, a smart way to go about it, because that, like you said with Bring Me the Horizon, that they can do a song that is a straight up pop song, or like their kind of lo-fi EP they put out, but also could probably mix like their heaviest songs possible, right? So that's a great element of just how dynamic and huge this record sounds too, right? If you don't mind, I'd like to dive into the record. I like to do this with people, and we've talked a lot about the songwriting process and overall. But since I'm guessing when it comes to songwriting, are you the primary lyricist for this band as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the primary writer in general, I'd say. And I don't want to take too much credit because the boys, contribute so much. But I'm the one who like starts the song and sends the demo to everybody, and then we build upon it together. But yeah, I am the main lyricist. Yeah.
So we could go through. It doesn't have to be super long for each one. Especially Aberration is a primarily like a build up intro track to everything that's going on. But I kind of want to get your take on each one. If there's anything special you remember of it, or anything you want to break down lyrically with it. But broadly speaking, like lyrically for this album and the overall sound of it, the album sounds, especially with the title as well, Kiss Our Ghosts Goodbye, it sounds like a very like existential record. Like there's a lot of elements, if you from the lyrics I was able to look through or listen to and understand and things of that nature. Feels like a lot of everything from kind of like nihilism of the state of the world to like relationships to whatever in between. But just kind of broadly speaking, I'm sure it's maybe not like a hard concept record, maybe I'm wrong, but like, was there an overall feel you were going with this when it came to the lyrics as well as the music, or just kind of speak to the overall feel behind Kiss Our Ghosts Goodbye?
Yeah, well, initially, that's the funny thing about it, because initially I really wanted to get rid of, the concept of concepts, so to speak, because I felt like, although I really liked writing songs that, especially lyrically speaking, that cater to a concept that I, an already pre-existent or predetermined concept that I had come up with before actually writing the final lyrics for the songs. As much fun as that was for the first record, for the second one, I felt like I really wanted to explore, at least start by exploring each song, each demo idea as is and as its own kind of world and universe, and not having it, under an umbrella of a broader concept from the get-go. But what's interesting about it, that I did end up writing about very, very similar themes, and that sort of a kind of a common thread that I realized in hindsight afterwards. Not after, the record was fully done, but in the final stages of writing the record, I'm going to say. So yeah, I feel like there are three main themes that I sort of touch on this record and get really personal with. I feel like one is because before I continue with that, one thing I really wanted with the lyrics for this record was I always like to write my stuff with a lot of metaphors, and then in a kind of a vague-ish way, so that kind of people can paint their own story onto it and relate to it. But with this record, I felt like that if I really wanted the listener to feel what I was feeling when I was writing it, I maybe should be even more direct and personal and let it be known very clearly what I'm writing about, while still keeping, the metaphorical part going on and everything. Because, I still like it when lyrics are at least a little bit poetic and not like completely straightforward. That's just, my taste. But yeah, I still want to be more direct and personal with them. So one big topic on this record, on multiple songs and on some of the singles, was my sexuality. In between album 1 and album 2, I finally publicly came out as bisexual, and I am in a homosexual relationship with Aliaj, or harsh vocalist. So there's that. And I felt like there was something I never touched on lyrically because I was afraid to. I was even afraid to do it now with this record, and I was afraid because the first single we released, Make Me Wanna Leave You, touches on that, and I was really afraid when the time came for it to be released, what the reaction of people would be, how many homophobic comments we were gonna get or whatever. But I'm really happy that I got the courage to do that and just put that out there, because I feel like with concepts like love, and especially struggles with love, and because we didn't really put all that many or any love songs about it on this record, we mostly touched on topics like the issues we were dealing with because of our sexuality and our relationships and stuff like that, and bigotry and homophobia from the outside that we were sort of getting from certain sources. But I felt like if I was that direct, even for people that are not that kind of sexual orientation, or that cannot relate to it directly, could still relate to the struggle in their own way. So I felt like still being honest was the right move here, and I'm hoping I still am right. So that was one thing. The second thing that was really, really important lyrically here was my diagnosis. So I got diagnosed with MS also a couple of years ago, and that was between Imago and really, really starting diving into Kiss or Ghost Goodbye. And that's why, that whole writing period was really, I couldn't hide it. I couldn't, run away from it. Even if I didn't want to write songs or lyric ideas about it, it just kind of came to me naturally, because it was that hellish period of my life where I wasn't sure what was going on or what was going to happen. I'm happy to say that I'm good. It's not, you can't cure this, but it is treatable and the medication's working. So, well, yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of songs about that, and just about my, depression that came out of it. I had a lot of really, really big issues with depressive thoughts and suicidal ideation recently, because of, as a direct result of my diagnosis, because it just felt like my world was falling apart. So there's, songs that are touching on that. And then, as you mentioned yourself, there's this ongoing theme of looking outward and feeling this sort of existential dread, because we can tie all of these topics that I just discussed together with just I feel like us as a society, humanity as a civilization, we're really, really, really progressing so well for most of my life. I feel like we were having less and less hate and less racism and less bigotry and less bullshit like that going on in the world, and it was so good. And in recent years, I feel like all of that is being really rapidly undone with the surge of bigotry and homophobia and racism and xenophobia and really, really questionable ideologies. And just that, it still frustrates me so much when I just when I turn on the news and see stuff like that. I don't have to go into any like specific names or political figures, because I'm not that kind of guy, but it does make me sad to see that kind of stuff. So some of the songs, a lot of the songs, and one of the big overlaying themes on this record is this existential question of, okay, what is going on? Where the hell is the world going? Are we sure we want what's happening right now? And for example, the last single, the most recent single, and the final track on the record, so What Do You Have to Save, kind of ties that together really well, because it sort of asks the listener, is there anything worth saving? Is there anything worth fighting for still, or are we all just doomed? And I don't provide an answer to that in the song or on the record, because honestly, I don't have an answer yet. Hopefully somebody else does, and hopefully it's a good one. But yeah, so that was one big thing as well.
Yeah, it always goes back to I've had on several guests from different countries that have kind of talked about their, and it is interesting now with this all being so connected with all these different things like you referenced, whether it's homophobia, or broadly speaking, like hatred and bigotry towards the LGBTQIA plus community in at large, or as you're saying, just kind of like things just backpedaling into chaos. Being from the United States, I can definitely attest that is something that is happening very quickly. But it's not just here; it's everywhere, right? You see this kind of blow up everywhere, and I do appreciate, like you said, you're not trying to call out specific things necessarily in those veins to the point that it's like so specific that you'd have to like name drop somebody or something like that in it.
Yeah.
But this kind of feeling of dread and of like, I felt the same way. It was just like, for a long time, there's always been kind of divisiveness and crazy things going on, but it felt like you're always like advancing, right? And then now it's really felt like things are being pulled back more and more, almost on a daily basis. If you, like you said, look at the news, which I do far too often myself,
Yeah, same.
or just thanks for honestly going over like the things with the diagnosis, because again, the way you write these songs, somebody might not be dealing with specifically an MS diagnosis, but they might be dealing with, it could be like it could be a number. It could be like you were alluding to earlier as a byproduct of that, of a mental health diagnosis, or just having these feelings of something not right going on and not being able to figure it out, or whatever the case may be. And all these, that's what I appreciate about these songs, is you did what I think is like the pinnacle of good songwriting, where you don't make something so generic that people are like, can't really connect with the lyrics at all. When people go so broad, and so some of my favorite bands are that way and they're able to do it well, but you're like, man, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like that's, or maybe you don't need to know exactly what you're talking about, but like, I'm not even sure if I'm connecting with what you're trying to say, or if you're saying anything, right? And yet you're not making it to where it's so idiosyncratic to yourself that people can't identify it with their own feelings. So that overall existential dread from these three topics that are very much, I would say, overlapping in a way that the record does feel like a concept record, as I said earlier. I think that's the pinnacle of good songwriting. Not to sit here but that's my job here as a podcaster, I guess, is what I really like music, is to just like, give you a bunch of compliments, right? But I do think like that's what I really, when it came from the lyrical perspective, which I think also fits. I think it helps that you're the person that starts off with the songs too, is each song, the kind of feeling you get from the lyrics is also embedded deeply in the music as well. These things are very, very connected with the dynamics, with the different emotions you're trying to put on display. And so, yeah, I think it was like a very good example of great songwriting to both make things relatable, but also make things specific, right? Like, I think you did a really good job of kind of pairing those two things, which is a difficult thing to do.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like, honesty, as long as it's not like super, self-centered and egotistical, which thank you for confirming to me that I was not like that when I was writing it. I was worried that I was maybe a little too self-centered, writing about myself all the time, like whining about my own shit. But thank you for confirming that was not the case. In any case, I feel like honesty, as long as it's not too extreme in that sort of self-centered way, will always be relatable. Even, as you said, even if somebody doesn't have an MS diagnosis, luckily, wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but they might have some of the, some other stuff going on, or as you mentioned, those things that sort of came from that, like the depression part and everything. That's a far more common issue in the world than MS is. So yeah, that's why I felt like being 100% honest would probably be the the way to go if I wanted people to really feel something. And I feel like with this record, even more so than with the first one, and especially because of the state of the world right now, I felt like I did have a message that's even more directed to the listener, not just me writing songs about something that some people might relate to or whatever. But this time I was really sort of speaking to the listener, and the album title ties into that, and the opener track ties into that, because I perceive sort of all of these, I decided to perceive sort of all of these issues trauma or whatever that I worked through in a way with this record as ghosts that were haunting me. And so, through writing this record and sort of trying to process all of this stuff by writing it and doing it and putting it out and really thinking about it and being mindful of all of this because of it, I try to work through it and kiss those ghosts goodbye, so to speak. And, in the opening track, Aberration, that was one of the final tracks that I wrote for the record because we needed an opener and that was still missing. So that's where that came in. I say something like, let's all kiss our ghosts goodbye. I'm kind of sort of asking everybody who's listening to this to maybe try to do the same and use this album or any other album, anything really, as an opportunity to work through their stuff and leave the negativity in the past. I'm well aware that that's very, utopic thing to think that's even possible to achieve. We're always all going to have issues that we have to work through. I'm still not sure if I've fully processed all of the stuff that I was writing about on this record, but every little step helps. And I feel like with our music in general, although it always comes from kind of a dark place and might even sound super, super dark in some elements and segments of it, I always really try for us to have a silver lining there and a little bit of an element of hope or, a light in the end of the tunnel, because I feel like there's so much negativity in the world and in music that a lot of people put out, and there's nothing wrong with it. Again, I listen to so much music that's just so dark and depressing and negative, and I love it. So I'm not talking shit about those people. I love that stuff. But I felt like there's not quite as much music that touches on topics as complex as these, while also trying to share hope and hopefulness, alongside, dealing with that stuff. And I really wanted to do that. I really wanted to be the kind of songwriter that kind of does that, or at least tries to do that. So yeah, that's kind of where the whole story ties together.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you did a great job breaking this record down overall without me. Sometimes I'll do like track by tracks. I don't think we really need to do that. I think you did a great job of talking about, and people can kind of pull from this of like which song is more about what, that's where we get to leave it up to the listener a little bit, right? You don't have to feed them every little bit from each song. But I do appreciate that, because I think there's two things in music a lot of times that, a lot of people put out extremely dark, especially in heavy music, extremely dark music. That it's just bleak, it's just anger, it's just, and I think there's a catharsis to that. That's why so many metal fans enjoy that. But I do think it's good to not try to promote like this toxic positivity of like there's always going to be something worth, like that kind of music is kind of like, there was an era of metalcore that tried to do that for years in the 2010s that really became marketing and really kind of hokey, at a certain point. There were some good albums, but in general, it was kind of a misfire overall as a branding exercise sometimes. But I do think it's important to try, it's more of just being real with yourself, that like, while things are dark, I'm sure, no one wants to just sit here and stew in this. Like, you're going to try to find something to pull your way out, right? Which is really the human condition and what what we experience on a day-to-day basis, which is a wealth of emotions of trying to find some purpose and some enjoyment in life, even when we can talk about things, as we discussed earlier, that feel like they're deteriorating, right? So that's a really cool thing and very relatable for a lot of people. Again, for everybody listening, make sure to check out the record Kiss Our Ghosts Goodbye, which will be out September 20th. So like you said, just in 12 days. So thanks again for breaking down the record in depth on that. I really appreciate it. Just for last couple of questions, after this record comes out, obviously you got the album rollout, as we just said, just shy of 2 weeks from now. What's going forward for the band? What are you guys doing in the future? Are there shows lined up? Do you got a tour lined up? Just kind of what's going on post releasing this record for the band?
Yeah, there's so many, ideas that we keep having at all times, and there are actually quite a few things that are in motion already, things that are being planned out and worked on actively. So the first thing that will be happening is the release festival for this album, because we're organizing a 2-day release festival here in Ljubljana in October, at the end of October, and it's going to be us performing 2 different sets on each night. First night is going to be the new album front to back. Second night is still going to center around this new record, but we do have quite a few surprises ready, not to spoil anything. And 2 different openers a night. We're going to have a Hei'An beer, which I'm super, super excited about, the New England IPA with passion fruit notes. I'm so happy that we were able to pull this off finally. And a food truck and everything. So there's that. This is going to be, the major next thing that's happening right after the album release, pretty much, or a month after. And we're super stoked. It's also going to be the only Hei'An live performance in 2025 to give it like the real note of exclusivity and of it being something super, super special. But yeah, for next year, we're already working on a lot of live activity. We'll see what we manage to actually make happen and what doesn't happen. But we are already, I can already say now, although I can't announce anything yet, sadly, but I can already say now that it's looking pretty, pretty good. We're looking at possibly having more shows than we have so far in our entire, still fairly short, but still in our entire career. We might have more shows in 1 year alone in 2026. I'm really hoping that'll happen. And that's, different little support slots, different little, weekender headliners, different, festival appearances. So we'll see what exactly ends up actually happening. But there's a lot of stuff at play, which I hope that all of it happens. So we'll see. So a lot of live activity for sure. But one cool thing that we're also working on right now, and for now it's still kind of in the first stages, but it is happening, is a remix EP. We really, because since we did the whole organic, violin quartet stuff with the first record with the East West Sessions that we, that done before, we figured that, to do like a total shift with this record, that maybe the continuation of it wouldn't be another live session with, orchestra elements, but a remix thing to really play into the electronic aspect of our music. So we'll be working on that pretty soon, and we're aiming to start teasing it and release it sometime in the first half of 2026. So hopefully that happens. And while all of that is happening, we are, as I mentioned, already starting to write the next record. We do have quite a few demos left over from the sessions from the previous one. We do have quite a few new ideas that we've already put down a bit in our DAWs, and we'll see where it takes us. We do have some songs that are almost fully fleshed out songs already that could have been released soon if we wanted to, but we won't, because we're trying to see where this whole story leads us again, as we did with album 2. So yeah, constantly trying to do something.
Yeah. It seems like continue to hit the ground running, which is a great thing. That's cool that you get to do your own festival for this release, like a 2-day festival with that. That's so cool, especially in your home area. And yeah, we'll just have to make sure this record blows up so we can get you out here in the States. That's the real goal here, right? So thanks again so much for going over this record. Absolutely fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. Last 2 questions for you before I let you go is to tell people, or I guess this isn't the question, but tell people where they can find the band, where to follow you, etc. And then I always play a song at the end. I am going to release this before the record's out, so it would obviously have to be a song that will be already out of the 4 singles. But pick a song off the record to play, and then just tell people where to find the band and see what you got going on.
Well, so you can find us pretty much anywhere. We we have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Patreon, all of that good stuff. We're not on Twitter. We're not on some of those new things, like is it called Blue Sky or whatever it's called?
Yeah, Twitter clones. Yeah.
We're not on there yet, but we are on all the more massive social media that there is. So you can find us pretty much anywhere. And also in terms of streaming platforms, our music should be. It is, but I'm saying should be because it sometimes gets bugged, but should be on all streaming platforms that anybody uses. Hopefully it is. It's definitely on all the major ones. And yeah, in terms of a song that I'd pick out of the 4 singles, that'll depend on, if you want to go with a heavier one or with a more chill one. I'm still really in the mood for the latest one. Because I don't like to listen to my own music after I've gone through the whole process of making it. When we're in the process, I keep listening to it on repeat. When we're getting the mixes, I'm listening to it on repeat. When we get the final masters, I have a few weeks of just listening to it over and over and just seeing, am I still happy with it? I am, But with What Do You Have to Say, I haven't listened to it in the longest time. And now that it's out, I've just been listening to it on repeat because I'm like, we actually made quite a good song with this one. So I'd love to play this one.
Right. Yeah. So you're talking, just to make sure, you're talking about the one that you have at the very end of the record, right? Yes. What do you have to say? Okay, we'll play that at the end. I usually put a little clip at the beginning, so I'll make sure to find a real heavy one to put at the beginning of this. And we'll do this. So we'll get best of both worlds. We'll do that. Cool. Thanks so much again for doing this. Again, you can find all of the links to find Hei'An in the notes below on YouTube or whatever you are listening to this on podcast platforms. And we're going to play What Do You Have to Save on the Powerless podcast at the end of this. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wait, our hopes and dreams are burning in the sky. What do you have to say? Have to say, wait. The world is crumbling right before your eyes. What do you have to save? Have to save. Empathy is just a memory. You would betray me in a heartbeat. Do you hold anything dear? You got anything to saving? Any reason left to tell me I can let go of my fear? Do you hold anything dear? You got anything worth saving? Any reason not to tell me?